The world's biggest economies have been locked in a fierce trade war. China and America, two of the world's largest powers, battling it out with tariffs, restrictions, and economic strategies. These nations, once allies in global trade, found themselves in a high stakes game of economic chess, where every move could impact not just their own countries, but the entire world's economy. The trade war escalated quickly, with each country imposing hefty tariffs on goods from the other, sending shockwaves through international markets. But amidst this global chaos, one small Southeast Asian nation has managed to maneuver through it all: the Philippines. How did this tiny nation, with a population of more than 110 million and a modest GDP compared to its global counterparts, manage to stay afloat, while larger, more powerful nations struggle to maintain their positions? What's their secret? Was it their strategic geographical location, nestled between two of the largest trading partners, or perhaps their rapidly growing economy, driven by sectors such as business outsourcing, agriculture, and remittances from OFWs or overseas Filipino workers? In truth, it was a combination of factors. As America and China clashed, Philippines found an opportunity to strengthen its economic ties with both sides, avoiding the destructive impact of choosing a side. By positioning itself as a neutral ground for business, the Philippines became a key player in global supply chains. The government, led by its ambitious president, capitalized on this opening. Through careful diplomacy, the Philippines strengthened trade relations not only with America and China, but also with other emerging economies in Asia and beyond. It wasn't just about trading goods, it was about becoming a hub for investments, especially in manufacturing and technology. Beyond trade, the Philippines had another advantage: its booming tourism sector, which helped inject foreign capital into the economy and provided a buffer against external shocks. With a friendly business environment, rising infrastructure development, and a young, dynamic workforce, the Philippines offered an attractive alternative to companies looking to diversify their operations away from the conflict zones. So, how exactly did the Philippines outplay the giants of China and the United States? To understand how the Philippines has come out on top, we need to first look at the history of global trade and tariffs. Tariffs, essentially taxes on imports, have been around for centuries. In the early days of trade, they were used as a way to protect a country's local industries from foreign competition. But over time, tariffs became weapons in bigger geopolitical struggles, especially between superpowers. In the early stages of trade, nations imposed tariffs to safeguard their economies and industries, such as agriculture and manufacturing, from cheaper or more advanced foreign goods. This protectionism, however, wasn't just a means to protect economic interests, it was also a tool of diplomacy and warfare. Throughout the 16th and 17th centuries, European countries often used tariffs to establish trade monopolies and undermine rival nations. This often led to heated conflicts, as nations fought not just for territory, but for economic dominance. The Industrial Revolution in the 18th and 19th centuries changed the global landscape of trade. As factories sprang up in Europe and the United States, nations began to view tariffs not just as protective measures, but as strategic tools to control markets and access resources. This led to the creation of trade blocs like the British Empire's system of imperial preference, which imposed tariffs on goods from colonies to ensure that trade flowed through Britain, further cementing its economic dominance. Fast forward to the late 20th century, the world saw the rise of two powerful economic forces, China and America. Both countries have used trade policies to bolster their economies, protect their industries, and even gain an upper hand in global politics. America, as the world's largest economy, used tariffs during the 20th century to protect its burgeoning industries, especially during periods of economic downturn or when industries felt threatened by foreign competition. As seen with the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act of 1930, which worsened the Great Depression. Meanwhile, China's rapid economic rise in the late 20th century brought with it a shift in global trade dynamics. As China integrated into the global economy, especially after joining the World Trade Organization in 2001, its use of tariffs and subsidies to protect domestic industries, especially in sectors like steel, electronics, and textiles, has had a profound impact on global markets. The Chinese government has been accused of employing unfair trade practices, manipulating its currency and providing state support to key industries, leading to tensions with countries like America. This brings us to today, where the relationship between tariffs, trade policies, and global politics is more complicated than ever. Tariffs are no longer just about economic protection, they're increasingly being used as tools in the broader strategic competition between nations. The US China trade war, which began in the late 2010s, is a prime example of how tariffs are used to leverage political power. Both sides imposed billions of dollars in tariffs on each other's goods in an effort to force trade concessions. By 2018, the trade war between the US and China took center stage, with tariffs being the main weapon. America, led by Trump, imposed tariffs on billions of dollars worth of Chinese goods. China retaliated, imposing its own tariffs on US products, and this is where the Philippines stepped in. You might be wondering, how can a small country like the Philippines even be involved in such a massive global conflict? Well, the Philippines found itself in a unique position. As a country in Southeast Asia, it had strong trade ties with both the US and China. The US is one of the Philippines' biggest trading partners, while China is a major source of imports and a growing player in the region. Because of its strategic location and trade relations, the Philippines became a key player in the global supply chain. Many companies in the US and China rely on goods that are produced in or pass through the Philippines. This meant that even though the country was not directly involved in the trade war, the impact was still felt in its economy. As tariffs were raised, businesses in the Philippines faced rising costs, which affected everything from manufacturing to exports. Additionally, the Philippines had to navigate its relationship with both the US and China carefully. While the US has been a longtime ally, China's growing influence made it an important partner too. The Philippine government found itself balancing these two powers, trying to protect the country's interests without picking sides in the heated trade conflict. One of the key sectors where the Philippines began to see a significant boost was in agriculture. The country's agricultural exports, such as bananas, coconuts, and pineapples, became more valuable in the global market. US consumers still had high demand for these products, and the Philippines, unlike China, was not facing tariffs when sending them to the US. This created a golden opportunity for the country to increase its agricultural exports, and many farmers saw better profits as a result. The Philippines did not just stop at agriculture, it also became a crucial link between Chinese and US businesses. As trade tensions grew between the two giants, many companies looked for ways to continue doing business without facing high tariffs. The Philippines, with its favorable trade policies and strategic position, became an ideal place for these companies to set up their production lines. By shifting some of their operations to the Philippines, they could avoid the tariffs and still have access to key markets in both the US and China. This made the Philippines this made the Philippines an important player in global trade, not just for its own agricultural exports, but also as a manufacturing hub for multinational companies. This period marked a time when the country's economy started growing in new ways, creating more jobs and opportunities for Filipinos. It was a time of economic growth that helped boost industries across the nation. Here's an interesting fact. Companies like Apple, Companies like Apple and tech giants in China began outsourcing production to the Philippines. It was a clever move. Not only was the cost of production lower in the Philippines, but companies could also avoid the punitive tariffs imposed by the US and China. At the same time, the Philippines leveraged its trade deals, especially through ASEAN agreements, to further cement its position in the global market. It was using existing trade relationships to its advantage, ensuring that products could flow freely without the burden of heavy tariffs. But how does this affect the everyday Filipino? As the Philippines became a trade powerhouse in its own right, it led to new jobs, increased wages, and a more stable economy. Not only were international companies flocking to the Philippines, but domestic industries also flourished. With access to cheaper raw materials, lower manufacturing costs, and a more flexible workforce, local businesses were able to grow and thrive in ways they had not before. For workers, this transformation meant more opportunities. As industries expanded, so did the need for skilled labor. The rise of various sectors, including manufacturing, technology, and services, resulted in a surge of jobs opening across the country. From factory workers to software developers, Filipinos found themselves with a broader range of career options and the chance to climb the professional ladder. Wages too began to rise, with foreign investments pouring in and domestic industries growing. Employers were not only competing to attract top talent, but also offering better compensation packages to retain workers. This wage growth was not limited to just high skilled jobs. Even lower income sectors saw a boost. Workers in industries like construction, retail, and hospitality benefited from wage increases as companies adjusted to the demand for labor and a more competitive job market. The rise in wages and job opportunities had a ripple effect on local economies. As families began to earn more, their purchasing power increased, leading to higher consumer spending. This in turn supported further economic growth as businesses saw increased demand for goods and services. Local markets flourished as Filipinos were able to afford better living conditions, invest in education, and contribute more to the national economy. Furthermore, this growth did not just benefit urban centers. As companies expanded their operations, more businesses were established in provincial areas, creating jobs in smaller cities and rural communities. The decentralization of economic activity led to more equitable growth, giving Filipinos in far flung regions access to better employment opportunities, reducing the rural urban divide, and contributing to poverty reduction. The government played its part too. Under President Duterte, the Philippines embarked on an ambitious infrastructure program known as Build. This initiative aimed to modernize the country's infrastructure, creating jobs, improving transportation networks, and laying the foundation for sustained economic growth. The focus was not just on upgrading roads, bridges, and airports, but also on building metro systems, ports, and reliable power sources that would facilitate easier trade and movement within the country and beyond. In addition to bolstering its domestic infrastructure and investment climate, the Philippines sought to diversify its foreign trade relations. While the US were focused on tariffs, sanctions, and trade wars, the Philippines was looking somewhere else, strengthening its ties with a wider range of countries and international organizations. Duterte focused on building partnerships with countries in Europe, Japan, Southeast Asia, and even Africa. This strategic diversification helped shield the Philippine economy from the effects of the trade war, reducing its dependency on any one trading partner. The country also signed new free trade agreements and expanded its participation in regional forums such as AEC and ASEAN, which gave access to a larger market for Filipino goods and services. By building stronger ties with European countries, Japan, and even countries in Africa, the Philippines was making a calculated move to reduce economic vulnerability to geopolitical tensions. This diversification ensured that the country had a robust and varied trade base, minimizing the risks associated with over reliance on any single economy. And it wasn't just the economy that got a boost. The Philippines' rise as a trade player also increased its geopolitical influence. With a stronger economy and better trade relationships, the Philippines has gained a seat at the table in international negotiations. It became a neutral ground for discussion between global powers and a key partner for other nations looking to expand their reach in Asia. The Philippines was not just surviving the trade war, it was thriving. As the trade war continued, the Philippines kept pushing forward, all while other nations were distracted. It may not have been the biggest player in the game, but it certainly wasn't just sitting on the sidelines. It positioned itself as the perfect alternative to China for companies that wanted to avoid the risks of tariffs. So the next time you hear about trade war between China and America, remember the Philippines.